Heute habe ich 3 Glatzköpfe in der Sendung und wir reden auch noch Englisch. Warum es aber trotzdem gut wird, das erfahrt ihr gleich. Also dranbleiben. musotalk TV wird präsentiert von Waldorf Music. Holt euch die fetten Synthi-Sounds aus deutschen Landen ins Studio. Den berühmten Waldorf-Sound gibt es auch als Plugins für Macs und PCs. Mit dem Gutscheincode musotalk bekommt ihr 10% auf alle Einkäufe im Waldorf Online Store. Weitere Informationen unter www.waldorf-music.de. Und Steinberg. Ob professionelles Recording, Mastering, Casual Recording auf dem iPad mit Cubase, Cubasis, Wavelab, Halion und Co. seid ihr immer bestens gerüstet. Informationen zu neuen Produkten, Tipps und Tricks und interessante User Stories findet ihr auf der Steinberg-Webseite unter www.steinberg.net.
Herzlich willkommen zu musotalk, dem Music- und Sound-Production-Podcast aus Berlin.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen zum musotalk Stammtisch News der Woche. Und heute haben wir eine ganz spezielle große News rund um Aira. Und deshalb habe ich heute einen englischsprachigen Gast in der Sendung. Und das ist der Nick Bett from Sonic State. Hi Nick.
Hi there, how you doing, Non-Eric? I'm glad to be here. Tables are turned.
Yeah.
It's my first time.
Yeah,
I feel honoured. I feel also slightly ashamed that I'm only able to speak English. I do apologise for that. But as I said, I can ask for a small table if anyone needs one in German.
That's good. And probably for some beer as well.
About, yeah.
Just
I can
about.
point in German.
Okay, cool.
What do you say then? Haben Sie einen kleinen Tisch, bitte?
Einen kleinen Tisch, bitte.
Nick, you are running sonicstate.com. It's probably one of the longest running shows about music production on the web since 1995.
Yep, I am indeed. It shows. You can see how tired and how much hair loss I have incurred over those years. But yes, that's me.
And you told me before the show that you're very close to have 1 million views per month just on your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, we're very close. I think because I mean, to be honest, this is unusual because obviously we have NAMM that's very close, and then we have the Aira stuff, which has been very popular. So those two spikes have created a kind of an anomaly, I think they call it in sort of space terms. So yeah, I don't know if it'll happen. I don't know if it'll stay like that, but I think we're going to be there in the next few days.
Und dann haben wir in der Sendung noch den Rolf Würmann und der ist deswegen prädestiniert, heute dabei zu sein, denn er hat eine TR-808.
Ja, genau. Da hinten, there it is. It's hard to get it out because I'm using all of the 11 outputs for my mixing console. So I'm really curious what the new Roland Aira TR-8 will be.
Right, and Rolf, du machst ja auch eigene Soft- und Hardware-Synthesizer und nennst dein Unternehmen Tempo Rubato. Und da gibt's
yeah, that's my own brand for the analog synthesizer. It's a dinosaur already in the iOS world, but I was also responsible for the Waldorf Nave, which released last summer, and I'm helping Arturia for some iOS stuff as well, like the Oberheim iSerm.
So let's stick to English then, Rolf, right? For the rest of the show, until we kick out Nick. And I have another guest in the show, straight from the United States of A, our man from the NAMM show that couldn't make it due to technical limitations. Hi, Thomas.
Hallo Non-Eric. Hallo musotalk. Ja, Nick war ja auch da. Ne? Ich bin ja nicht der einzige Man vom The NAMM.
That's true. And you have a website called Integrative Concepts, and you do promotion propaganda for various companies in our industry, and networking great ideas.
Yes, hopefully, yes.
This is the place to be if you want to do it. Okay, obviously the biggest topic in the last week is and was Aira from Roland. But before we go into that, I would like to introduce the show that we'll be showing here on musotalk on Monday together with Rolf. And it's our App-Gecheckt show all around the subjects of iOS music making, something that we stole from Sonic State, and there it is called Sonic Touch. We call it App-Gecheckt.
aber man hört es hoffentlich.
Du wackelst hin und her mit deinem Finger, kann das sein?
Nein, ich wackel nicht. Im Moment mache ich nur durch Druck und kann dadurch die Klangfarbe noch ein bisschen verändern. Also die Modulation, die man hoffentlich eben gehört hat, ist eine Wavetable-Modulation, die habe ich durch Druck ausgelöst.
Ah, okay.
Ich mache jetzt mal den Tilt-Effekt, da muss ich hier...
Okay, let's go. Rolf, why do you have a TR-808 in your studio? And as I heard from you, you just recently bought it, right?
Yes, I recently bought it because I was probably too young when it was released, or couldn't afford the money to buy one when it was released. And it's a classic. It's one of the classic drum machines, like in the analog world, and in the digital, probably the Lin drum. And since I'm also designing synths, like synth software, I wanted to go back to the roots and to understand what makes a specific gear or machine or instrument so special. So I need to touch it physically, and I loved it from then. And it's a great machine. It has a great touch. And the irony, I think, is they haven't designed it at that time, particularly for electronic dance music. They have designed it as a kind of backing track machine for whatever kind of music. So it has been discovered, let's say, by a musician, discovered, yes. Yeah. And they found out it's a great machine.
Mm. And Nick, you did a number one hit record in Germany, actually. Yeah, Tom Steiner,
just last
right?
Week.
No, a couple of years ago, Tom Steiner. And I was actually, I thought that you must have worked at some stage with a TR-909 or an 808, but in your review you say you haven't.
No, I was a sample generation, so I've never really got on with pattern-based sequencing and drum machine type stuff. It's not been the way I tend to work. So it's always been kind of, I started off Atari and sampler. So, that's where I got all my sounds from and sound modules. So the actual 808, 909 thing didn't really kind of work for me.
I used it intensively in the early 80s. We had a small demo studio with a Tascam Porter Studio. We had a TR-808, a Roland Space Echo, and a Poly 61. And that was our setup.
Beautiful.
And at that time, that was really cutting edge. And as Rolf said, obviously that was the time before digital drum machines. So the 808 was still trying to emulate, a real drum kit. Failed, but became a classic because of that.
It's interesting, isn't it, that a lot of these machines from Roland that are the hits were mistakes rather than by design.
Absolutely.
I don't know what that tells us, but it's something that we should think about.
Yeah.
And Thomas, since you are doing communication for the MI industry, was it you that suggested to Roland to, take another look at their legacy and not have other competitors, take hold of their legacy and releasing stuff that is kind of very close to their TR line?
Actually, no, because first of all, I have no ties with Roland at all. And the second thing is, and the most important thing, as you guys were telling your 808 stories, I just sat back and recalled a little bit what my history with drum machines is. And there was this Roland Dramatics. It was 606. It was the smaller silver one that came after the 808 and basically had the same look as the TB 303. And then after that came a Roland drum machine, which was also called TR something, TR929 or something. It was a white one, and it's not fancy or so. It was the first digital one. And then there was also this, I think the first Alesis HR16 or so came out then. And we were always in search for some okay drum sounds to create some demos and basic tracks when it was not possible to record a drum set, because it wasn't so possible generally, because we only had 4-track or 8-track recorders, and it was difficult to create a decent drum sound for that. And when then the Atari came, and that was Nick was referring to, and the samplers, this was a godsend because we didn't have to deal with this pattern-based bollocks stuff from the old drum machines as well. The sound is one thing. I think the sounds are great, but to deal with these devices was really a pain in the math. So I don't really get why nowadays these things are so popular. And
I think that's something we need to talk about after we sort of looked a little bit closer at some of the features and the sound, because that's one thing I've been thinking about quite a lot, is who will be using it and how he will be using it. But first, I'd like to play a little bit from Nick's review on sonicstate.com. You can watch it there. It's online already a couple of days. And he did actually run some of the sounds through a spectrum analyzer, so we can actually see what's going on there.
35 hertz, you probably can't hear that on the whatever speakers. Bringing it up from decay right up. This is just the tone of the bass drum. I can also add this attack.
And I think what we can actually already tell, even through the video, is that we really have that big, boomy bass drum sounds. It's there, and I think they've taken. You did also a side-by-side video between the old 808 and the new one. And it was, hey, here it is.
Still got it. Yeah.
Still got it, great. And I could actually tell a difference, but I wouldn't dare if I was blindfolded and I had only a couple of minutes between them. I could not tell it. Actually.
It's interesting, actually. What I did find, because I just wanted to. The caveat for that was I had a very short space of time. As I said, I couldn't quite figure out the programming mode of the 808, and I did find that I couldn't quite get things exactly the same because the parameters are slightly different, particularly with the snare. But what I did find is somebody in the comments said, actually, I have an original 808, and the TR8 sounds more like my 808 than that 808 sounds like my 808, which shows you how much sort of discrepancy there is between just the sounds of electronics that is that old. So it depends which one they modeled it on, I guess, is what I'm trying to say as well.
Well, you can probably comment on that because you have a lot of analog gear there, and you have got a couple of Korg synthesizers now, and I think you have multiple MS-20s or MS-10 there.
No, don't tell the public what's here in this room.
Sorry. Oh, yeah.
My insurance gets a problem
But
then.
you can see it on your video already. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I think even if you look at this Roland uses a digital technology, what they call analog component behavior modeling or something like this, and I think it goes back to mathematically analyze and model the circuits they're using, probably in a similar way than Yuhi did with Diva. On the other hand, I think it's very hard to tell the difference between digital and analog if you don't turn the knobs. So if you have one static sound setting and compared, they're quite close. But the true love and the true fun in analog comes if you start to turn the knobs. So you experience a behavior of a thing. And that's, I think, the most important stuff, why people going back to analog gear is because you have that specific feeling of modifying the sound in a way which digital is not easily giving you the same experience here. That's the thing. I think from the video, the new Roland Airas are sounding quite nice. And they have to because there are so many digital copies around. But the interesting part is when you're in front of the machine and start to turn the knobs, what is the feeling about it? And does it inspire you to something?
I could say yes. There is an element of that, definitely. The real timeness of it, even though it's not true analog, which everybody seems to. I mean, there's just a huge amount of polarization. People are split. Some of them are hysterically shouting it's not right, and some of them are saying this is great. But yes, having it in front of you is it's definitely a physical interface. That's very pleasing. That's the thing that people tend to, when they say, "Oh, I have a plugin that does this," but it's not the same experience at all. You're absolutely correct.
Quick
And
question, Nick.
Sorry.
As you're already on the technical and physical part of the unit, how light is it, or how heavy is it, and how does it feel in terms of build quality? Is it more like a plasticky feel, or more very, very rugged, solid feel? And how does the faders, and especially the buttons at the lower row, how does it feel?
Well, as you can see from that picture there, they've obviously still got a warehouse full of Jupiter 80 buttons, which is what they're using there. The faders, they fit. They felt fine to me. I mean, when you think about what the original knobs on the 808 felt like, apart from the programming knob, all the little kind of tuning, I mean, they're pretty crummy.
Yeah. And
this is fine. It's not super heavy. It's a plastic shell with a metal front panel.
Okay.
So, it's certainly no worse than you would expect. And when you consider the price, I mean, this is the thing that I found quite interesting. I went and looked back. The price of the 808 originally was about $1,400.
Yeah.
Which in today's money is about $2,700.
Not even more, I think.
Well, I found a calculator that kind of that's the figure it gave me. So maybe even more than that. So, nobody would buy.
We paid about 2,000 German mark at the time in the 80s, and that would amount to about 5,000 or at least 4,000 euros, I think, for today. It was vastly, very, very expensive.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think these are the factors that people are thinking about. The comparison is not a fair one in many ways because it's just infinitely less expensive than the original was or is. But it does, I think it captures the essence of it. The thing that I noticed with the 808 when I did the comparison, certainly this 808, is very analog. So, I mean, almost to the point of, is it broken? Because, you hit the snare 5 times and it's completely different every time. Whereas on the Aira, there is an element of that, but it's a narrower variation.
Okay, there's a couple of things that I found really interesting, or I thought could, not interesting, but could actually be a kind of a problem, because it only's got 4 outputs. So,
sure.
So I can only get the single outputs if I use it via USB with a sequencer. Is that correct?
Yeah, with DAW or a host computer, and you wanted to route stuff out. I don't know what the through latency would be, but it's possible that if you had maybe a small computer, you could run the outputs separately if you wanted to. But yeah, you get 4 physical outputs. Voices are panable between in the master, and they're also assignable to auxiliary A or auxiliary B. So you get 1 stereo pair and 2 monos.
Okay. And the real-time programming. Let's just sum up a couple of things that are different from the original, because in the original you could not, I remember quite well, do real-time programming. It would only
trigger. Yeah, you can't trigger voices.
You can't trigger anything, and there wasn't this kind of the style that does of sort of shutter and stutter effects.
What's it called? It's called something or other. It's not stutter. It's scatter. That's it.
And we didn't have that kind of note repeat in the original. But one thing I found, and I think we've discussed it in here when we talked about the Volcas and other new rhythm machines, this can actually do any kind of time signature like the original, right?
Yes, you can set the number of steps to be whatever you want, basically, from 1 to 16.
Because it seems to be popular these days to omit that kind of different time signatures, because we find iOS apps that can only do 4/4 and other stuff. So it's quite interesting to actually see that. I think the Volcas, could they do different time method? They could only do 2 bars
you can switch steps on and off. So you could effectively make the length of the Volca shorter. So you've got 8, but you could, depending on what mode you're in, I forget now. But you could switch them on or off throughout. So you could have half of the steps, but they don't necessarily have to be in the same order. So it's quite clever in that way. I mean, I think the thing that's really missing from the Roland, though, is the ability to record any parameter moves into the patterns.
Okay.
I think that is just, I don't really understand why that didn't happen, because that is, to me, if you've got all those knobs, and we are in the 21st century, I believe, that's something that they should have absolutely had, because they're, just things like tweaking the length of the hi-hat decays, will add a certain amount of groove, and all of these things that add feel and humanity to machines. You can't do in that. I mean, you can do shuffle, but I mean, that's, I think they missed a big part of what a drum machine needs to have these days with that.
And then it also seems to be quite limited in the way you can actually save stuff.
Well, it's interesting. The saving is not, it's kind of like cloud style saving. So you recall a pattern by selecting it, you edit the pattern, and then that's how the pattern is from now on. Same with the drum kit. You record, you make all your tweaks, and then that memory location is the state that is left in. You don't actually have to save anything. So you can recall a pattern, you can copy and paste patterns, so you can move things around and edit them, but there's no save. So whatever you're doing is saved in real time, effectively. So there is no way to try something and then undo, if you like, or not save it just to go back to the original. So that's a bit unusual.
Okay. Thomas, you're a big fan of retro hardware. Ha ha ha. Pun intended. But you see that in our industry there seems to be a great trend, and we will have another topic in the show today, because Korg is rebuilding another classic and have already done so. What is your feel why this is happening in such a big scale now? We build the old stuff again.
Rolf basically said what the basic reason for this is. It's there are, well, based on these urban myths, why these old instruments from like the 70s and the 80s had this special thing about them, and the way they sound and the filters, and you have direct access, and you instantly you are directly connected with what you're doing sonically and your creative process and stuff like this. These myths are there, and there are a lot of people who were born after this period of time, or were not equipped with enough money at that point of time to have access to these instruments. And now the people who have a little bit budget now would be able to put their hands onto stuff like that and equip their environments with things which, just by being there, communicate a certain level of creativity in music and stuff like this. They set a tone. It's part of the environment, and that's absolutely an important thing. And also the other thing is that a lot of younger people also hear the stories about how everything was so great in the old days with the old instruments and stuff like that. They now for the first time have access to basically at least the concept of the originals, and also for the first time have the chance to have some stuff in their bedrooms and apartments which don't look like a laptop, but they look like some piece of synthesizer gear and stuff like this. And that's basically the same thing what the guitar industry started, I would say, 10, 15 years ago, when this big wave of create some funny, interesting-looking guitar pedals which do just something slightly different, very, very special, and give the people the reason to buy a new pedal for every 2 or 3 months. And also, with all aged vintage guitar look and stuff like this, you just have them and put them up at the wall, and you have already created an atmosphere, being a, musician, a sort of lifestyle. So that's what in German I call the MI industry, the musical instruments industry, turns a little bit more into Möbel industry, It's artifacts you put into your space to make it look like it has something to do with music.
It's interior design.
It's interior design, exactly. Thank you, Nick. And the funny thing is, I talked to Thomas Nordek, who's Steve Weiss and some other fancy guitar players, guitar tech, who's also been around in the 60s and 70s. He's been working with Frank Zappa for years. And he said nowadays, basically, everything is a computer. And please don't hide that fact from me, because if you focus on the benefits of the computer stuff and lose completely the negative aspects of things which come with weight, and they're chunky and bulky and you have to carry them around, then you can make a step forward and loosen your mind from the physical necessity of having stuff and just focus on the creativity. So,
yeah, but when we focus on creativity, if we now look at the usage model for this sort of equipment, it does sort of integrate with your digital audio workstation, but it's not as integrated as, for example, Spark or Native Instruments Machine. They can all be synced and linked together. How do I make music, and who would make music with this sort of setup?
I don't know if you've seen. I don't know if you've seen some of the recent Roland videos. They've been visiting some artists, and amongst them is a guy called Gerald, who's in Berlin, and he's basically one of the inventors of house music. And he had this band. It was called 808 State, I guess. And he's a big guy who started basically with the TR-808 his career, and this sound basically is a foundation for what he is now.
Okay, I mean, that's the sounds, Thomas. That's the sounds.
But you can look at him, how he's completely focused on this. Roland has this case, you open it up, and on the top you have the drum machine, and then there's this keyboard thing, and then there's this small, I don't know, TB something 3.0. Whatever.
Yeah, the TB3, but that's what they were doing. That's the Roland kind of promo kit. They were taking that round. It's not his. They were taking it to everybody and going, hey, look at this.
Right.
And so it was being, and they were all going, ooh, lovely. I can't help but think, I think what you're right, Eric, the point is what are you doing? You know, what is this equipment doing for the advancement of music? I'm worried that what we're going to end up is a whole load of one bar records again, which will be, you know, as tedious as they were the first time round.
Because when we look at it, we all agree that the sounds today are still on vogue in a way. Yeah. But when we look at a complete production, the production values and the general sound and the density of the tracks has dramatically changed in today's dance music towards stuff that was popular 20 years ago. And to get that kind of big, fat sound, club sound, electro sound, you would need to add something to your Roland Aira setup. How do you do it, and how do you get that together? I can see, you know, having all these toys, you know, in a rack and playing around, maybe doing it at a club. But when I would do a record, I would need to add maybe just simple things.
Yeah, but I think that's true, but I mean, there's no sense in buying analog gear to reproduce the dance charts. You know, then you have to buy Nexus and Silence and all the plugins these people are using. So there's no, I mean, it would be totally dumb to buy an Korg Mini MS-20 and think I can do like the top 10 of the dance chart. I mean, that's stupid. I mean, and I don't think these gear is made for that.
There's only one synth sounds these days, so yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, these are the hover like super saw blah 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 stuff, which now every massive Silence, Nexus, whatever can produce, and my kids are raising with these sounds in the ears, and I'm really nervous what these sounds are making with them if they are not starting to hear other sounds. And so I think if the analog revival of instruments is breaking the in-the-box music making, which has been on a production level made to a very high level of art or artistry or whatever, if now I'm using my Arturia microbrute to improvise in a jazz band or whatever to make music live, I don't think that's a necessarily bad thing.
Okay.
No, that's no
I
bad
think
thing at all.
it's the question is, I don't have a problem with the new analog instruments. The question is, Roland with Aira make a claim that they're not just copying their past, but adding some new stuff, which leads to new creativity in music. And I think I'm not sure if this really holds true, because at least to the point I see, Aira is more or less a way for people to reproduce the classics of acid house and stuff. And as you say, I'm expecting a plethora of thousands of YouTube videos where people are making acid house with this kind of stuff. But does Roland Aira really leads to new music, new expression? And that's the big question mark.
No, I think is the short answer to that.
Yeah.
I think I should talk to Propellerhead, because maybe they could do a Rebirth mod and bring Rebirth up again, and have this Rebirth mod look like the new guys.
Black and green.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I think the nod, the only thing that I see that they've done, if we're talking about advancement of music, and this isn't necessarily criticising them, because bear in mind that Roland have been unable to revisit some of this old stuff for many, many years because of the very strong sense of, we must never go back, that the previous head of the company had, who's now moved on and stepped down, and so they've got a new era of music creation and stuff going on. So this, as a first step, is a really not a bad start. But I think what they've done is they've added USB audio to all of the devices. So the TR8 works as a USB audio interface. You can have inputs and outputs. The TB3 even uses an audio interface, although there's really no point because there's no input apart from the TB3, but you can use it as an output. But it sort of feels like, well, I don't know that was really very well thought through. The VT3, the voice transformer, also does, and I'm guessing, although I don't know, because the System 1, which is probably the most interesting in terms of what can it do for us, because it will have an advancement and an open-ended kind of side to it.
Okay.
Probably also has audio USB as well.
I think, Nick, we should talk about the other components after our break, our commercial break, coming up now. Do I do it in German or do it in English?
You should do it in German, because they're paying. I'm just a guest.
Alles klar. Jetzt machen wir ein bisschen Werbung für unseren News der Woche Sponsor Waldorf, und da habe ich für euch was gefunden, und zwar ein Video. Und ich wusste das gar nicht, dass es die Attack Sounds, den Attack Soundset mittlerweile auch für den Blofeld Synthesizer gibt. Und zwar im jetzt habe ich den falschen aufgemacht, jetzt muss ich nochmal klicken.
Gotta love Waldorf stuff.
Now I'm in the shop. Jetzt bin ich im Shop, denn im Shop könnt ihr den Blofeld Synthesizer Soundkit Attack kaufen. Und wenn ihr das macht und in den Warenkorb geschmissen habt, müsst ihr nur noch daran denken, im Warenkorb. Great, it's the English version of the shop page. Great. Makes sense.
They knew I was here.
Ja. Einfach nur den musotalk Gutscheincode eingeben, einlösen, und dann bekommt ihr 10% Rabatt auf alle Einkäufe im Waldorf Online Shop. So, das war die Werbeeinblendung, und zurück zum Thema. Die TB3, Nick, you reviewed that as well.
I did.
That's pretty far off from the original in terms of look and feel.
I don't think it could be much different. I mean, it's like a cross between. It's got the kind of Korg chaos vibe to it, because that central colourful bit is actually a backlit touchscreen, which is X and Y. It's mono touch. It's not multi touch. It's pressure sensitive, so it will actually transmit modulation, which is kind of interesting. I'll be honest, 303 never really featured all that heavily in my creative work. I'm not, a TB303 nut. And as far as I understand, it sounds it sounds very similar, or as close as is possible to do. But what it essentially is a preset machine. It's got a 4 oscillator synthesizer in there, presets, and the first bank are kind of permutations of the 303 sound. So the first 2 presets are the square wave, the triangle wave and the square wave. And then it gets into this other stuff, it's got effects. You've got the Josh Wink classic sound. You've got all these other sounds, distortions and what have you. So you can get all of those signature 303 sounds, or certainly a lot of them, in preset form. What you can't do is edit any of that stuff apart from turn the knob up and change the envelope speed a little bit and depth, and also the cutoff and resonance, which is fine. It's just not my. I thought really, bearing that in mind, I want to be able to get at the synthesizer, because it's not, in terms of if you put it up against something like the Mini KP or one of the other Korg products, it's not that much. It's not as good value, I think. Perhaps just it feels like to me. Yeah, it's fine. And if you really wanted a 303, you can get that life out of it. And it's also got shuffle, which is used, and it's much, much easier to program than the original 303. I think the thing about the 303, let's not forget, again, the original TB303 was designed by Roland as an auto accompaniment system for wedding bands or whatever. And it was a mistake. It got turned into what it became because it has a classic sound when you abuse it. So it can sound like that. It's much easier to program because the original was very much trial and error, I think. Okay. I don't think many people actually knew how to program it. They just press buttons.
No. You know how you did it? I did it on mine. You take out the battery.
Right.
And you just put it on just a little bit, like, creating a kind of short circuit kind of spike. And then it would automatically, randomly program itself. And sometimes that would work. Patterns. Yeah, it was great. I think the TB3 kind of breaks a little bit with the concept, because before, like, we have all these knobs and direct access to the sound engine, and suddenly it kind of feels a little bit weird in that context. And also the System 1, and I need to ask Rolf, did you look at the System 1 a little bit more in depth? Because for me, I don't really get it. I don't know, is it because the System 100 was a modular synthesizer? What has this to do with the System 100?
Nothing.
Oh, great.
At least, maybe Nick, correct me. It maybe have some similarity to the SH101 or something like this, but with a System 100 or 100M, is just the name.
Yeah, I think the thing about this is you get a synthesizer. It's a virtual analog. It's a 2 oscillator and 4 voice, which is kind of interesting. But you've got this plug-out architecture, which allows you to put in new synthesizer models that Roland will release. I'm starting to hear echoes of the Varios. I don't know how long that lasted, but they're working on SH101, SH2, and a System 100, which, the System 100, I don't know if that's an M or just the 100, but the envelopes were particularly interesting on those, very snappy, I've heard. So those are going to be models that you can run into it. And what's interesting is when you load that, if there are parameters on the front panel that it doesn't have, the lights go off. So you just get access, the interesting idea. And I think the jury's out because, to be honest and to be fair, the only demos we've seen, apart from Brandon Ryan one at NAMM, is from the chap at Dance Fair, who's a Swedish fellow, who had a very fixed demo. And I think the reason he had that was because it's just not ready. And it's not, we're not able to hear. So I think to make any really formal judgment on what it can sound like and what it do is a bit premature. Hopefully we'll be getting it soon, but I think, it's just not ready yet. But
and I read something about a plugin. An SH101 Roland virtual instrument that's supposed to be controllers. I think I read it somewhere in.
Well, you're gonna be able to turn it into a 101 because the plug-out synthesizer, it's got 2 modes. You've got effectively the front panel, and then you've got another button which is plug out, which loads a plug-in into the DSP.
Oh, okay.
And then
now
it
I get
becomes a model of that synth.
Okay.
So
okay.
you know,
Far-fetched.
if they get this right, you know, we could be seeing all sorts of stuff coming into it. But you know, it just depends on how good the models are. We just have no idea because I mean, Roland doesn't have a track record in this area, so we can't judge it by anything that's been before, apart from the Varios, which you know didn't really kind of take off, so therefore wasn't supported so much.
Thomas, as a concept, I mean, you're really into concepts, right? Integrated concepts, Thomas Wendt, okay. As a concept, I find this a bit diluted in many ways because in one way it's kind of retro and then it adds new stuff that somehow counterweighs some of the features of the other instruments. So we look at the TR-808?
TR8.
TR-808.
I'm getting confused here. And then we've got this sort of really laid out like a classic drum machine. And then we look at the TB3, and it's totally different. It's got a touch screen suddenly, so that's really sort of kind of modern. And then we've got a modular kind of plug-out capable synthesizer with another concept. I find. Do you think that? Can you make a clear concept out of this? I can't.
Well, I think the idea is to revisit the classic stuff, give the people basically to buy now in big amounts what they have learned and they've been longing for out of various reasons, and to have this experience and this sensation of the classic stuff, but also build the bridge towards the new concepts, the modularity, and to have this investment a little bit more justified by having an open-ended system, because you buy the synthesizer and it's a DSP, and basically that's pretty limited compared to what you get for if you buy a computer or an iPad or something like that. So you make it open-ended, because now of course you can extend it. You can put in, you can load in plugins, I read. So you can load in other systems, in principle, other instruments into this very same thing. And then I ask myself, okay, you have this piece of hardware with all the controllers for that special dedicated synthesizer sound, and you have the access to the real thing directly, basically. I mean, it's software, it's a computer, so there goes this analog myth, story thing, feeling, emotional aspect. And then, if you load in another instrument, how does the mapping with the controls work? Is this one-to-one still? Or do you add then, for the first time then, as well, a level of abstraction, which is also always the thing that people discuss when they work with software, because very few controllers are one-to-one. If you turn the knobs on a controller, and it's always a different situation from what you have on the screen.
But could there also be a kind of I mean, from a business point of view, Rolf, you're producing hardware analog modules. Are they already released?
Pardon?
Are they already released, your modules?
Yeah, one module is released, yeah.
Yes. So in terms of business, how does that work out? I mean, Korg's rebuilding the Korg MS-20 Mini, which is an analog unit at a price point about 500, 600 euros. Then we have the TR8 here, which is also about 500 euros. Is it necessary to actually be able to build this kind of drum machine at that price point to actually use digital technology, because it would not be possible to do that totally analog? Do we see this kind of hybrid sort of thing here because we want it cheap?
No, I don't think that it's digital by just economical reasons, because they want to have something cheap, and digital is cheaper than analog. I think that's not true anyhow, if you look what Arturia or Korg are doing. On the other hand, I think Roland wanted to make this digital because of their beliefs, because of their thinking. It's a clear statement. Let's put it that way. Roland says digital, Korg says, sometimes analog makes fun.
Okay.
Korg has still virtual analog machines like how it's called, King Korg and some stuff. And Roland has a clear statement, present and future is digital.
Okay. So
I
how
think
does
one
it?
thing? Sorry, one thing that's to be said, it would not be possible to make the TR8 in analog cost effective because we've got the 909 and the 808 in there. That's I don't know how many voices. It's like 20, 30 voices. They would all have to be discretely component built. That would just, even if you did just the 808 or just the 909 as analog, you might be able to get it somewhere approaching affordable, but no way could you do the both for anything like that price.
I don't think. Look. I think clone by Asset the 808 clone by Asset Lab. I think is 800, 900, almost a grand euro. But these are made by a little company is with low numbers. If a big company like Roland is doing this with their experience with mass production, I could imagine they could make it for 600.
Maybe so.
So how much will the Korg Arp Odyssey be? Because that came in yesterday. Another one. Thomas, I mean, are we back in the future? Once again, I mean, this is... It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I remember, Nick, when we were set together with your guys at Messe, after Messe, I said, what is this fascination for hardware with you guys? And he said, yeah, we've been playing with the software for years. Now we want to touch the real thing. But is there enough people out there that pay? I mean, how much is this Arp Odyssey going to cost? Maybe 2,000
Well, I think, as I said before, it definitely makes sense from a business point of view because it's now possible to sell these devices. Because what else could they sell? I mean, from a business point of view, companies like Roland, Korg, Yamaha, they wouldn't be able to exist in the way they are, like the big companies based on hardware construction. By now selling plugins for Cubase or Logic and the iPad maybe. So they have to come up with ideas for hardware that people want. And so all that stuff that people want is basically the stuff they can't get anymore because it's not around anymore or extremely expensive and high maintenance, only for specialists. So when Joe Blow was able to get this, vintage road-worn Stratocaster for $1,200, which looks like being played by Rory Gallagher for 30 years and has traveled the world and stuff like that. They instantly jumped on this, and this is basically the same thing with these synthesizers.
Oh,
because
you mean the washed-out jeans effect?
Yes. No, the vintage instrument. No, the vintage instrument effect. As I said before, this time, like the 70s and the 80s, these are mythical times, like the medieval times with dragons and sorcerers and magicians and stuff like that. There were devices like somebody touched it and there was a beer on top of it and this was aged and this is why this filter sounds like nothing else. And only if I had this filter and this thing in that condition, I would make it. So
my life would be complete. I think the important thing to remember also is Korg have been mass producing analog stuff for 3 years now. So their production line is getting geared up. They've got the people who know how to quality check the stuff. They've got the people who know how to solder the things. They know, they've trained up an entire production line in how to make analog equipment. So I think this has got to be only the beginning. I mean, they are releasing instruments that they know there's a demand for and that they can charge a premium price at this end, at the Odyssey end. But then they've also got the Volcas and what have you, which, let's face it, they caused as much, if not more, of a fury, and they're fun. But, I question the analog drum machine being any use at all. I mean, it doesn't sound anything like as good as the TR8, but it's analog. But so what? It doesn't sound as good. But the point is, now maybe once they've got more of these instruments under their belts, the designers can get their teeth into doing something interesting and new and different, and maybe we'll start seeing some really kind of, because Korg do innovate, let's not forget as well, it's not just about mimicry. So maybe we're going to end up with some innovation in analog synthesis, which would be very interesting.
Okay. You know what I know, what would make business sense? If we do an ad now.
Yeah.
The second ad. Okay. Entschuldigung. Okay, wir machen Werbung für Steinberg, einen unserer Hauptsponsor für die News der Woche, unseren schönen musotalk Stammtisch. Und da habe ich wieder was ganz Besonderes für die iPad-Jünger da draußen. Wir haben das auch schon in App gecheckt, kurz vorgestellt, was am Montag kommt. Das ist das Update von Cubasis fürs iPad. Das ist die Version 1.7.2. Und ich finde das super, dass hier wirklich permanente Produktpflege betrieben wird. Denn ihr seht es 1.7.2, dann gibt es wahrscheinlich noch 1.7.3, 4. Das geht richtig zügig hier immer weiter. In der neuen Version könnt ihr jetzt den Audio-Recording-Buffer anpassen und auch die Gesamtlatenz hier nochmal einstellen. Das ist besonders sinnvoll, wenn ihr ein schnelles iPad Air habt, denn da könnt ihr mittlerweile schon ein klein wenig runtergehen, was die Buffer angeht. Und dann habe ich noch gefunden hier bei Steinberg auf der Webseite das Home Studio Praxis Tutorial von unserem Freund Ching von audio-workshop.de. Und da geht es um das wie richte ich das ein, was brauche ich für Equipment. Also so ein Rundumschlag rund ums Home Studio. Tja, das war's. Vielen Dank an Steinberg für eure Unterstützung. Alright. Let me look at the agenda here. We are more or less coming to a halt, are we? Or is anything more we want to say about this whole? Are we going to see what else? How about the Oberheims?
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
Oberheim is still existing, and he is releasing new instruments. Mr. Tom Oberheim, he's making a new sound.
Is he?
Yes.
Yeah. But the two
This is
boys.
more in the boutique market and it costs, I don't know, 2-3 grand. But Tom Oberheim is still active. I mean, EMS is still active. They're building still synthes with minimal quantities and
Sequential
waiting list.
in a way. With
Dave Smith is
yes.
still building polyphonic analog or almost analog synthesizers. He's just doing again what he was starting with. Korg have found back to their roots. Roland, maybe it's a different story. Yamaha, we do not know. Moog is doing what they started to do, even with Ceramines. So, I mean, everybody is now active. And I think coming for a second back with a different angle to the ARP Odyssey, the most interesting part from that story is to read that one of the two founder of ARP is still active as an innovator and businessman. He just left synthesizers and he was recently active in a cloud, I think, backup company. So really new stuff. And I think it must be, it's really funny. I mean, ARP is one of the hero companies of the 70s. And the guy who was partly responsible for designing that stuff is not sitting somewhere in a cottage and, I don't know, is drinking whiskey. He is a very active entrepreneur. And this collaboration now with Korg is just probably for him some fun project.
Yeah, he's very, very, very wealthy. He doesn't need the money.
Yeah, and he's still there and doing stuff.
Where are the and did you know, Rolf, that the NI founder is also doing a hardware synthesizer?
Which
Stefan
founder?
Schmidt?
Yes, it's a new synth, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I heard about it, but have you seen anything?
No,
so
not
far?
yet. No, I only heard about it.
Yeah, it's a computer inside.
Oh, okay, it's a computer inside.
Yeah, if you
But
look
there's
at the
always a
pictures, you can
computer.
see some pictures with the lid removed, and you see like USB cables and stuff like this. And
How long does it take to boot up?
It's like a little bit like the Neuron.
I have no idea.
That was
what the
also
Neuron is.
PC in a box.
Yeah, even Axel is still doing synthesizers, at least the designs.
Yeah, we're going to do it.
And I don't know. Even Wolfgang Palm is doing synthesizers still.
Absolutely, and really successfully. Which we will be actually presenting the WaveMapper 2.0 on Monday in our show. So will we see a PPG 2.2 Wave computer rebuilt?
What about version 3?
Yeah, a working version, the first working version. Great. Oh yeah, I mean the absolute. I mean somebody has already done it. I mean, done the most ridiculous thing is rebuild the Fairlight, right? I saw that on Messe. Did you see that?
Yeah, and I think it's the original guy who's doing this.
Yeah, it is. That's right. You could buy. It's quite funny, isn't it? Because I mean, the power of the original Fairlight. Actually the new Fairlight's got a little place to put your iPhone, and the iPhone is actually probably, I don't know, a gazillion times more powerful than the CPU in the original Fairlight. But that's the way things move on, isn't it? I wonder whether or not we're going to start to see some retro software. So people are going to be interested in actually maybe,
the Neon from Steinberg.
Yeah,
Neon.
maybe
I want the
version
Neon
1 of-
back.
all of that stuff.
What's about the Synclavier, Nick? Do you heard anything about it?
I don't know anything about the Synclavier at all. I remember it was very, very expensive. So I don't know. It was a completely different level. But I've never seen a real one. I do know someone who's used one, but that's about as close as I've got to any information about Synclavier.
About 20 years ago or 15 years ago, there used to be one in Spandau here in Berlin. I think from one of the Tangerine Dream guys. And somehow I got a contact to them, and I went down, and because I had this infatuation with strict timing, and I heard that the Synclavier was really spot on. So I went to them, and they talked about it, and we had a nice meeting there. We just talked, and then I said, "Could you please play 12 bass drums on top of each other? I just want to hear if they don't flange." And then we got into this big discussion about how is that relevant for music, and I just kept insisting, "Can I please hear the 12 bass drum?"
Did security remove you in the end?
Yes. They did it quite well. Yes. Okay. I'm more or less done on these subjects. I've got a couple of more topics here, but since we're already at playing time of around an hour, we could come to the tips of the week. Let me go through my rundown sheet, if that's correct. Yes.
Aber ist das nicht ein bisschen sehr speziell jetzt, dass die Leute irgendwie eine komplette Sendung auf Englisch haben, nur und gar nichts Deutsches mehr oder so? Was sagt denn das Forum? Ich meine, der Chat.
Der Chat, der meckert gar nicht. Gucke gerade.
I'm just asking if that's fine for the people that they just have experienced an hour in English and no German stuff.
You want to talk another hour in German right now?
No.
Would it be sufficient if we do another 5 minutes in German?
To be fair to the people, because usually the German people scream for German user manuals and German websites and stuff like this, and now.
Yeah, but after 58 minutes of English talking, I mean, the ones who are not fine with it have switched off anyhow.
Okay.
So to all the
diese
companies
Kommentare
out there,
hier, Thomas, sind euer
stop
Englisch.
the expensive translations of websites to German, because the Germans are fine with
Market
the
research
English.
conducted. Brilliant.
Yeah, we won't let this become a regular part of the show, but I think we can get away with it once every 10 years, especially if we have a great topic and somebody who actually got his hands on the units. I think that's very, very valuable, and that's more valuable for this show than to have it in the native language of most of our viewers.
Well, thank you for having me on and taking a chance on me.
Excellent. We do have a large archive on musotalk.de. So if you're watching this show somewhere else on YouTube or anywhere, go to w.musotalk.de. We have this huge archive of videos, and you can spend a couple of days, weeks, or months scrolling, going through them, looking at them, and enjoy the nonsense that we talk, mostly in German. Rolf, you have a tip for us.
Yes.
What is it?
It's about very, very retro.
Oh.
Even more retro than the 70s. And I'm not a big fan of sample library, but that's a sample library of instruments you cannot buy or produce anymore. So this is a guy who is really meticulously, as Johnny Ive would say, sampling very old instruments. And if you're in search for very strange keyboard sounds, which it's not sounding synthetically, I would really recommend here to have a listen to these very good sampled instruments. So you have Celestas and strange Lautenwerk in keyboards from 1500 something. And it's not some kind strange of rebuild. These are originals. He's sampling this from the best collections of the best museums of the world, and in a very high professional quality. So these things have their price, but it's very good. They have very good examples. Have a listen. If you don't need a synthesizer, but a very interesting sounding keyboard in your music, get inspired by these things. It's real samples and it's real high quality stuff.
Cool. Thomas, hast du einen Tipp?
Ja, das wird je nachdem, wann die Sendung ja dann heute online sein wird. Ich meine, jetzt gibt es ja schon den Live-Chat und den Stream und so. Heute im Laufe des Tages wird Bias für iPhone freigeschaltet.
Oh,
und
cool.
Da bin ich sehr gespannt, weil das Bias für iPad ist ja schon mal ein ziemlich gut klingendes Zeug für die Gitarre. Und das Bias für iPhone, wie gesagt, soll heute rauskommen für 9,99 €. Und das funktioniert dann auch so, dass man seine eigenen Amps in das Jam-Up mit den Effekten und so hineinpacken kann. Und das ist dann doch schon mal eine ganz komfortable, mobile Gitarrensoundlösung, finde ich.
Audiobus?
Ja, klar.
Inter-App Audio? Oh,
Ja.
All das ganze Ballett da, oder was soll das
Genau,
kosten, das Ding?
Soviel ich weiß, 9,99 €. Heute im Laufe des Tages gibt es da noch mehr Infos zu.
Okay.
Also heute Abend sowas.
Schick doch mal dem Rolf und mir einen Code, falls du sowas hast, dann können wir das vielleicht auch mal vorstellen. Das wäre super.
Gut.
So, then, Nick, you don't have to have a tip of the week.
Okay, well, I did think of something, just purely because I started to panic when I heard this, and so something came to mind. It may or may not be of any use to anybody, but I know one of the topics today on the list was the Sound Toys Microshift, which is a very interesting kind of stereo widener, harmonizer kind of delays type
Yeah, got
thing.
it here.
Unfortunately, there's no demo online, so it's very hard to hear what it sounds like. But aside from that, there's something that I used to do quite a lot on a lot of the productions I was doing with the Goldfrapp stuff, which was in Logic. If you wanted to try and make a mono signal more stereo, using something called sample delay, where you can actually delay one channel over another channel left and right by, like, I don't know, 128 samples or something, and it creates this very specific delay widening kind of thing. You can go too far, but you have to experiment. It really does make something sound amazing, but it's very static. It's quite an unusual sound, but that's a tip for widening stereo sources from mono. You might have to put it across maybe a bus if you've got a mono source. But that's something that I use quite a lot, and it does have that kind of old school harmonizer type sound.
And that's basically what the Microshift would do for you. I tried to get a demo, but it required an iLog account, and then I got a little bit.
No audio demos, no YouTube demos of what it does. I mean, come on, guys, we're in the 21st century. That's the only thing that was one of my thoughts on the subject. But it does sound good. I did find a demo from somebody on who'd done a review that was posted only a couple of days ago. And that was interesting, but yeah, you need to have that kind of stuff together if you're going to do a release, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. My tip is ears only. I'm not sure where to find it in Cubase, for example, but I think it's one of the functions in there, an old function. You just press a key and your screen blanks. And I used to do that with Logic and have a special screen set that would be triggered from the arrangement at the start of the song. So every time I would play the song from the start, it would automatically switch to a screen that was blank. But it's much easier if you're using a Mac these days, because you can just use your mouse pointer and place it in one of the corners. And so you can just hit playback, place it into one of the corners, and the screensaver comes up. And once you touch the mouse again, you put in if you have a password, then you have to type in your password, but you switch that off, then you have a very, very easy way to do ears only and just listen and do not watch. I do that particularly very often when I do arrangements. So I'm not sort of confronted by a visual feedback of what's going on in the song. So rather just listen to it.
Good idea.
Yeah.
There's also, I had this experience while I was in the US. I had to finish the mixing of an album for German EBM spoken word outfit Oberer Todpunkt. And I used for the first time the iPad, this RS Touch, extensively. And I was just sitting in the chair, leaning back, and was doing some final stuff and just looking at the faders and listening to the music, and I could adjust the vocals, how they sit in the mix and stuff like that, without looking at the arrangement and stuff like this. And this was pretty convenient, like sofa mixing with headphones on, and it was running on the laptop. This was a completely new experience for me, and that was very convenient. But this works only from a certain stage of a project, when you have already sorted out the basic mix and you just work on details. But then that's really, really convenient. Basically also ears only.
Das ist ein gemeiner Kommentar hier im Chat. Stevie Wonder hat das serienmäßig eingebaut.
That's why his music's so good. He never looked at the screen, you see.
Yeah. That's why he became so good.
That's it.
But we can just use the screensaver and, okay. Great. I think we wrap it up. Great show.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being so tolerant of my non-existent German. Your English is all exceptionally good, I must say. You put us to shame as a race of monoglots.
Haben Sie einen kleinen Tisch, bitte?
Yeah.
We will probably all 4 of us see each other live at Musikmesse.
Indeed, we
and
shall.
ask for, haben Sie einen Tisch für 4, bitte?
Yeah, so we could all sit at it and eat, because they only have small tables at the Messe, at the eateries, so yeah.
And we have a recommendation, right? A great African restaurant.
Yeah, if you want crushed goat, then that's the place to go. I can't remember what it was called or whether it'll still be in existence, but in the apartment we stayed at, I don't know if there's time for the story, but we all met we all wanted to go out to eat afterwards. There was quite a lot of us, and there was an African restaurant just across the hall of the road from where we were. But it was just an enormous wait, and we decided we didn't like the look of it. And me and Non-Eric went to have a pizza in just a little takeaway, which was fine. And I went back to the apartment. I was in bed. And they came back and said, our food still haven't arrived. And then they finally came back, and it was just they were these sort of bowls of bones. And they said it was really, really challenging eating. So no, we won't go there again.
No, I think we make a restaurant reservation beforehand, a couple of weeks.
Show.
Yeah, we should. Okay, until then, I'd like to say thank you for joining us, Nick.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And to Rolf.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And Thomas.
Vielen, vielen Dank. Viele Grüße.
Genau.
Viele Grüße auch an die Kollegin in Deutschland natürlich.
Also, ich sag nur noch, make more music mit musotalk. Bis zur nächsten Sendung. Dranbleiben.